Thank you so much for being with me, guys. I was thinking about the closings that I've had so far in 2025, and you guys throughout the transactions that we've worked on together have been very inspiring to me. And so I went to a convention in February, and they talked about the age of a first-time home buyer, and it made me think I really wanted to like interview you guys because I think you're very inspirational, and your story could probably inspire other people who are on the fence or just really scared of this. So Bianca and Tyler, I think I told you, well, before I get into that, I would say, the most people in their 20s are still renting. So, if you don't mind, just kick this off with like what made you guys feel like you were ready for home ownership?
So I was in that group of 20-year-olds who was renting. I was renting a couple apartments in LA, and the rent prices are pretty outrageous. And then I've always been interested in purchasing a house, but just didn't know like the logistics. And then her dad actually said, "You're basically paying someone else's mortgage for them." And
Right?
once I heard that, I was like, "Yeah, what am I doing?"
Yeah,
That's when
yeah,
I started looking into the home buying options.
yeah, yeah. And same, Bianca, would you add anything to that? What inspired you to take this step now of all times?
Just from learning from him about how much he was spending on rent, it was
Mhm.
like, why would we be putting that much money towards someone else's mortgage if we can do that for our own and build our own equity? And it just felt like the smarter financial option
Mhm.
for us. So
Mhm.
we said, why wait?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
start now.
Do you want to say how old you guys are?
I'm 23. We
22.
we were both 22 when we closed.
Yeah.
You bought, like, I mean, it's unbelievable. And, people are worried about all kinds of normal things like interest rates and,
Yeah.
just the market in general. And markets, go up and they go down. And, the interest rates were really low just a few years ago. And people that's their only memory.
hmm
2021, these really low rates. But historically, this is not that high. And so you were ready and you sort of dove in. And what do you feel? I know we have quite a story together, but I would love you to share when you think about the challenges, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in the home buying process that maybe you were not expecting?
I think the biggest thing was running into issues that we weren't aware would be issues. We learned a lot about HOAs and how those carry so much weight in the home buying process. I think we went through some unique difficulties that aren't as
Normal.
common in the normal.
Normal.
So we learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
That was like the biggest thing. Another thing is getting outbidded a few
Yeah.
times. Um,
Yeah. Like you said, it's a very competitive market. So getting outbidded in this time period is not very uncommon. So
No, but it's so hard, right? Because don't most people think, well, if I'm going to go buy a pair of shoes or if I'm going to go buy, a tablet, I don't want to pay more for it than it's worth.
right,
mhm,
So we kind of go in with this mindset of, well, what's the best deal I can get?
right.
yeah.
But you guys faced a lot of challenges with outbidding because
Mhm.
of that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What would you say to people that are thinking that way?
Don't get discouraged.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It really happens for a reason. And with the discouragement, don't settle. There were so many times where I would tell him like let's just go for that one place. Like it's nice
Yeah.
enough. And then he kept telling me, don't settle, we're not in a rush. And that was like the biggest factor for us because now we're in a place that we're completely happy in and it's perfect for us. So
Yeah.
don't get discouraged with the outbidding because it's just not meant for you.
Yeah, there are
It's a,
thousands and thousands of houses available at any given time, and more will
you
pop
saw
up.
them.
Yeah.
Exactly. We
You
saw
were
all of
constantly
them.
searching, weren't you both?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So if not, something new will pop up in the next couple of weeks. We saw houses like as soon as they came on the market.
you
This
did.
one we saw after it had been sitting for like 100 days. So
Ah.
something will come for sure.
Yeah, tell the story of that because we weren't even together the first time you saw this place.
Yeah.
That lots of them. If I tell the story of us together, it's a lot of stories of us driving really far,
Yeah.
Yeah.
get somewhere and walk in and immediately feel like oh,
Oh.
they didn't even tell us the truth about this on this listing, and then turning around and driving home in traffic. So
Mhm.
you guys talk a little bit about how you stumbled upon this one because we didn't even go out together.
This place was sitting in my Zillow for a really long time, and the pictures weren't great. The pictures didn't do it justice, so we kind of just put it on the back burner and we didn't feel the need to want to come see it. There were so many other places where the pictures looked beautiful and amazing and the place looked clean, and we went and it was not that. Um, and I think I was kind of pushing this place on him and I was like, let's just go see it. What do we have to lose?
Mhm.
And that day we looked at two other places, and those two places were not great.
And
And
they had beautiful pictures on the description.
so we were discouraged that whole day. And then we came to see this place. I remember when we parked, there was a guy walking his dog down the street, and he said, "Oh, are you going to look at the open house?" And we were like, "Yes." And he was like, "This is a great neighborhood."
Mm.
And we were like, "Okay." So we walked into the house, and it was great. It
Yeah.
was amazing. There were things we needed to change, but the foundation was great. It was what we wanted. It checked all of our boxes, and we just went for it.
I'm kind of chuckling because you said the foundation was great, and
It,
we, as you know, have sort of a bit of history with things without
yeah.
foundations that are
Yeah.
great, but that's a story for another day, maybe. And it was rewarding to me too, as you walked into this open house and the agent, this doesn't happen very often, reached out to me and said, "Oh my gosh, that couple, I would love to see them in here. They remind me so much of the people that live here now and when they bought, and I was helping them." And he really, really wanted this for you guys, and then
Mhm.
sort of took off from there. So you came to an open house, and then I believe you called me, and that's when I got on the phone with him and we started these negotiations. And it still wasn't easy, right? I think I want to back up to like budget. And when you talked about being outbid, these HOA things that we're not prepared for, some people don't even want to look at things with HOAs because they hear these horror stories. I think we were close with a place that we found out wasn't warrantable. So
Mhm.
HOAs have a whole bunch of stuff. How did you decide on a budget and how HOAs and things like that figured into it? Did that change when from when you started looking or thinking about home ownership to when we bought this?
Yeah, I think we just knew we're pretty good with our finances. We're like always monitoring them, and I bought and owned a car already,
Mhm.
so I think we already kind of knew like what we can afford, and just getting that number was like really eye-opening because we can see like how much we can actually afford. But we also just didn't want to go overboard. But we know with home ownership, you can't just call the landlord and be like, "Hey, come fix this." We
Right.
know yeah, we need to have some money aside just in case anything were to go wrong or if we want to do improvements like we ended up doing. So we were just always had that in mind that we know what we can afford. We can go up to the top end if we really needed to, but wanted to stay lower.
Yeah.
And that's where the HOA factored in because we found that place with a really low price point, but then the HOA was like $800 or $900 for the HOA. So that wouldn't go into equity, so we just had to know what we were paying for, and we were forced to decide, but we ultimately decided that it wasn't the place for us.
Right.
So just kind of knowing what you have, knowing that there are places in your price range that you don't have to go over budget on was definitely nice.
Did people ask you like how much do you have to save up and how much do you need to buy a house? Have people asked you, your friends?
I think it's more just people are surprised that we did buy.
Mhm.
Hmm. Because
That's
that's certainly what we hear. I'm not ready to buy. I don't have the down payment. Do you
Mhm.
guys
Yeah.
mind sharing a little bit about how creative we got with that in terms of like how we got you into this great condo?
Yeah, so we had about like 30,000 saved, and we knew that was more than enough for our price range for a 3% down for
Mhm.
first-time home buyers. So we kind of knew what we were getting into, but then we didn't take into account closing costs, which was the same, if not double the price of the down payment. So we did get a little creative in that we found out that we could get seller credits for
Mhm.
closing costs and just go a little bit higher on the price to mitigate that closing cost payment. And so
Yeah.
once we figured that out, we understood that wait, we can actually get into the house with just around $20,000 and be all set and ready to go. And once we figured that out, that's how
Right.
Yeah.
definitely more confident in
Yeah, so you would
purchasing a
say
house.
that to somebody. If somebody were asking you for advice, would you say, look, if you don't have money for closing costs, if you're scraping together your whole down payment and this is what you've got, bid a little bit higher, but
Hmm.
ask for seller credit.
Yeah.
And in this market, sellers are considering that where we
Exactly.
had a 3% interest rate and there were lines wrapped around blocks at open houses and they
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
all these choices, they weren't even interested in that,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So people who are thinking, I want to wait for the rates to go down, aren't thinking about your situation, which is
Yeah.
like we're
Exactly.
able to really take advantage of seller credit so you could get
Exactly.
to a great condo.
Hmm.
I love that.
And I
Um,
think people get scared when they hear a 3% down payment because they think, oh, you're going to have to pay so much off for so long. But then there's refinancing options that,
mhm,
as a first-time homebuyer, you don't know all of these things. So it's good
don't.
to do that research before
Right.
getting into it
Mhm.
because then
Let's
it's not
talk
as
about
scary.
that because we worked pretty closely with your lender.
Hmm.
How was that experience for you in terms of all the things that a first-time home buyer has to learn? Where did you get most of your information? Some of it, I guess, was just as we went. We learned
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
as we went.
A lot of learning things. We'd come
Mhm.
into so many roadblocks and it's just asking questions and knowing what you're doing. He also did a lot of research on everything, which was very
Mhm.
helpful.
Yeah,
I
you have
was,
the mind of a 50-year-old, quite frankly.
yeah, I love to just research things, so I knew what I was getting into
Yeah.
beforehand.
Hmm.
My mom is a realtor, so I was able to like ask her questions as I went and just educate myself on the different intricacies of home buying.
I never
Um,
knew that.
yeah, so I think just the like what you could just go on TikTok really and find a lot of information through
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
But finding someone like a good realtor, a good broker like we had
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
to that'll work with you and teach you these things along the way so you're not just lost and signing paperwork that you have no idea what you're doing. So
Right. That's not intuitive to most of us.
mhm,
Hmm.
And certainly, not the first time we sit down to all of that.
mhm,
So would you tell, I mean, if somebody said to you, I can't possibly buy a house, I just don't have money. I don't have much in savings. Would you tell somebody, go ahead and make the call and see what get
Yeah.
pre-qualified, get pre-approved, just have the conversation.
definitely.
Can't hurt and see what you hear.
Yeah.
Definitely. Now that you mentioned that, I actually have had someone ask me because both me and my one of my coworkers lives in the same complex, and they were curious, like, how are you guys both in your 20s and own a house? And we were like, well, it's honestly not as bad as you think. The price you pay for rent is damn near the price you pay for a
Yeah.
mortgage. So you just have to put in a little bit more upfront, but you're gaining so much out of it with the equity. You'll always be able to buy another house with that
Yeah, you
equity.
just
So
started building wealth the day you moved in. That 3% that you put down is your equity already.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
And
and with
so
rent, you're literally just burning that money, just flushing it down the toilet. You're not
Mhm.
getting
flushing.
anything out of that but a
Exactly.
place to stay. At least
Right.
with purchasing, you get a place to stay and you
Build equity.
are getting that income back.
You are building wealth, and it's a stable payment where with rent, they can go up and
Exactly.
a
Hmm.
landlord can just
Exactly.
make those choices any old time,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you guys have any idea how many homes we toured or you toured before you made your offer?
We tried calculating it. We did some finger
Funny.
math, and we think we have around 20 for sure.
Mhm.
I personally think we saw a few more than that, but definitely around 20 before we finally sip out on this one.
But we
Okay.
did have a fat list of houses that we were just looking
Oh,
on
yeah.
Zillow and Realtor.com. So
Yes.
I think
I
with
mean, I
those,
remember 20 just in one email one time at the very beginning, like,
Oh, yeah.
I
yeah.
know what
Mhm.
we're thinking. There was about 20 in there, and you had looked at them at least online.
Yeah.
We hadn't visited some of those, right?
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
So, do you mind telling folks, did you have to make lots of offers before this one got accepted? And what did you learn from that experience? If you could give advice.
So out of the 20, I think we made 4 or 5 offers. So that's a pretty good percentage
Yeah.
of the
Mhm.
houses we've seen. But that was definitely difficult because we wanted to stay true to our budget and not go overboard on the places we saw. Also wanted to pay what we thought they were worth. So one of the places we offered on, we lowballed them just a little bit and At first, they were like, "No, we know what our house is worth. We're gonna get this easily." Couple months later, they call us again and they're like, "Hey, are you guys willing to reconsider?"
Remember that? That
Uh,
was wild. And that's when
exactly.
I think that was when I realized, my respect for you really grew in that one because, and you guys said it earlier, you weren't desperate.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Even though Bianca, like you were tempted, Tyler, you really encouraged that you guys not settle for something you didn't really want or wasn't a 10. And I remember
Right.
that one. It was really pretty, but it was
Mhm.
loud.
Mhm.
Hear all this zooming traffic.
Hmm.
It wasn't, and you did feel like it was too high, right? And they
Yeah.
just weren't having it and called more than once to say, well, come on, like you want to reconsider now. And
Yeah.
so, that says a lot about you if it's a 10 out of 10 that you're
Mhm.
willing, right? To do what you
Exactly.
have to do to get it. But when it's an 8, if it's a
Yeah.
7, well,
Yeah.
now, no, that's a whole different story, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So for you, if somebody said, what did you learn? Like 3 major pieces of advice when it comes to making offers for a home. Like, what would you say to somebody if you were talking to a whole group of people who have never done this about this whole multiple offers thing? Like, advice. What'd you learn?
I think one, it has to do with the realtor that you're working with because you were very good at writing good offers and making them sound
Thank
like
you.
what the sellers want to hear.
Mhm.
So I think that's a big thing. I think that was a big thing when it came to the sellers reading the offer and saying, okay, this sounds like a good offer and it's worth
Mhm.
it with the consideration of having a 3% down and asking for money towards closing costs. So that was important.
And I
Mhm.
think just not getting like discouraged at all. We wrote our 4 or 5 offers. We didn't get what we wanted on 4 of them. So we just stayed patient and stayed true to what we thought was right and came out on the other side with a pretty
That's
decent.
a message I'm hearing is stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Don't get discouraged because
Mhm.
if you just throw in the towel, you're back to renting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Know, and believe that this must not be the right one then, right?
Mhm.
It's a little bit easier than when things don't work out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So wish list, how did you guys decide your wants and your needs? How did you balance your wish list with what was actually out there and available in your price range?
I feel like we were pretty realistic with our wish list. They were not outlandish things that we wanted. Um, It was stuff like having a washer and dryer attached and not having a community washer and dryer, having an attached garage, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. Those are very simple things. In terms of other smaller things like a dishwasher, it was like, if we can have it, that's great. If not, we'll work with it. So just
Mhm.
being realistic with what that wish list is, especially with your budget, because it's once you go with a big wish list, then money racks up a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Did you
just
have a list of like we must haves as you were doing your searches? Did you have a list of things that were like
yeah,
must
it
have
was the
maybe?
2 bedrooms, 2 baths.
Hmm.
The washer and dryer was very important to us. And then an attached garage was a big plus side for us. I think when we first started looking, it wasn't as high up on our wish list as we thought it would be, but then once we saw some places with an attached garage, we thought to ourselves, okay, this is
I
a nice
remember feeling
extra.
that as well for you
Yeah.
guys. Yeah.
So I guess you also, your wish list grows as you start looking at other places too.
Was there anything that you thought you absolutely had to have, and then as the process went on, you realized I can live without it?
A dishwasher was one of those random ones that we
Hmm.
were
Hmm.
sitting on. I
Hmm.
Mhm.
think we could have done without a dishwasher, but
Yeah, well,
nothing too big.
I actually wanted a in-suite bathroom in the
Oh
master,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
and we found a place without one, and we we went with it. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. I'm thinking of the
yeah,
closet in that little area, but there's no bathroom there. That's
but it
oh
has
yeah.
plumbing in there, so
That's
eventually
right.
we're gonna add one in there. Yeah,
Love that. I
exactly.
love that. It's you look back, do you like, and it's not regrets necessarily, but is there anything you wish you had done differently or wish you had known?
I don't think so. I think we learned with all of the bumps we had on our journey. It was just learning opportunities. We came into this so blind as to what the process would be. So I think at the end of the day, it was all worth it. The first house that we saw, the very first place that we saw, it was what we thought our 10 out of 10 was. We put in an offer and we went down a month drain of so many issues popping up. There was foundation issues, and we were basically a week away from closing on that place. So with that, we learned so much. So going into the process again, we had so much more knowledge.
You did. That's a good
Yeah.
point. Yep.
But we don't regret putting an offer on that first place and going down that rabbit hole of issues because it taught us a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. We learned so much from this experience that we could buy like 10 houses now.
And you probably will. What about like, I'm sure people will watch this and think, I don't even have 30 grand. How in the world did people that are 22 and 23 years old save 20,000 or $30,000? Like, how did you prepare and save like that? Were there habits? Were there resources? Like, what helped you save $30,000 at your age?
We always knew we wanted to buy a house young. Renting was never in our thought process. So going into that goal, we just stuck to it. We were very careful with what we bought,
Mhm.
very careful with our finances.
I'd say
That's the
that's the
biggest
biggest.
thing.
We're not like the type to just blow a bunch of money on like vacations and things
Mhm.
like that, especially because we knew that we wanted to do this. So we have our entire lives to do that. And I feel like we're starting our 20s and 30s, our adulthood on a super head start. We're building equity. We are, um, I think it's just it was the smartest move to do. So we played our cards very
Yeah.
smart.
It's just
Mhm.
the mindset you have to go into
Yeah.
it.
Well,
We
I
spent,
remember you guys saying something like, this is our first home, but
yeah.
not, delusional and thinking that we need to find our forever home this time.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Our
That
first.
was another reason why we weren't like settling, or we kind of like settled on some things
Mhm.
because we were like, this is just a stepping stone. We're just trying to build equity. We need to get in something quick, not quickly, but we'd like to get in something soon. And we calculated with our with Liz, our broker, the cost of waiting, how
Yeah.
much equity we're losing
Mhm.
by not buying a house.
Yeah.
So when we saw that number, I think it was 30 or 40,000 in the 6 months we were looking that we could have had in equity, and we were just like,
Yeah.
yeah, we need to step it up. So yeah, I think it was just it's an investment at the end of the day. So we
It
knew
is.
we
I
Mhm.
mean, look, people buy their next property with that kind of equity.
Mhm.
People have put kids through college with that equity,
Right.
Yeah.
renovation projects with that equity. So if you're listening, talk to your lender about the cost of waiting. That's what
Mhm.
I like that you said that. Liz will be really pleased that you remember. All right, I guess like just advice. First time home buyers entering a competitive market. What would you say is like your top three pieces of advice? And I feel like you've touched on some of these, but what would you say if I'm 21 and I'm like, you're an inspiration to me. You're on a pedestal. How in the world do I even plan for this in the next 5 years even? What would you say are the top three suggestions?
I think first step was doing our research,
Hmm.
doing money calculations and finding out what is a realistic budget, what's a realistic house to look for. That's step one.
Hmm.
Step two is having the right team. I think having a good realtor is so important, and it's important to know someone who has known the realtor. So we found JoJo through my dad,
Yeah,
which he spoke so highly of her. So it's important to trust your realtor and to have someone who
I
you know
agree.
work for you.
Mhm.
And Liz was amazing too. So just having a good team that's
Team.
there working for you, answering all your questions. We would literally talk to you guys at like 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. If you're somebody out shopping and you don't feel like the people that are helping you are a team with you, maybe you need to be looking for somebody else. I would agree,
Mhm.
right?
We
Yeah, it
never
was. Had
felt
some,
like we were left alone in the dark
Mhm.
and trying to figure things out by ourselves.
yeah,
Yeah, the communication and just the like willing to tell everything about the process was extremely helpful. So
yeah.
that's definitely a huge plus. And thank you for
Are you
everything.
kidding? It was very rewarding I know Liz would say the same thing. I got to a place where I was feeling very protective of you all. So it's easy to, advocate for somebody when, you create, a relationship and
Right.
that's what I think a realtor and any kind of client should have is that people mostly pick their realtor because they trust them and because I
Mhm.
worked with your dad and he literally brought you to me,
Hmm.
put you down in my office and said, "These are my babies. Now take care of them." And I want to, and I believe he said, and I want us to use Liz because I had referred him to Liz
Hmm.
at some point too. And that's half the battle is feeling
Yeah.
like people that you can trust. Anything else that you were planning to say and I didn't ask the right questions to get it out of you? Anything you would share or you think is important for people to know?
I think that's it. The main thing I think that we wanted to stress was don't settle and be patient because
Mhm.
something will come that is, if not your 10 out of 10, you're 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, yeah.
So don't settle and I guess just be patient with what you have.
It's more realistic than you think it is
Hmm.
too.
That's when I really want to get that message out there. Again, when I heard 38 years old average age in this country, I was closer to your age when I bought, but that was a really long time ago. And it was out in the Midwest, and California is just a place in this market is an interesting market. And so I really wanted to be able to get your story out there because I think that you can really inspire a whole lot of people who want this and feel like it's not even possible for them.
Right.
It's
So
possible.
it
It's
is.
very
Yeah, I
possible.
mean, it's pretty possible.
We're in
There's
it.
stuff on the wall and it's a
Yeah.
different color. It's not yellow at all.
Yeah.
So, thank you guys so much. I'm going to kind of sign this off now, but stay in touch with me. I want pictures. I want to hear how things are going.
Of
We'll
course.
send you all of them.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for this.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
All right,
Jojo.
guys. Talk to you soon. Bye. Oh yeah, and there's that too. Anytime anyone trips, you'll remember me.